Let's turn to Alexis Poulin, a journalist and founder of Monde Moderne Media. He joins us from Paris. Alexis, we've seen this kind of violence in France before. Why do you think this killing in particular, has touched a raw nerve?
Well, we had the same kind of riots back in 2005 because of the death of two teenagers trying to flee from the policemen. So it's not new in France. What happened was that Naël, the teenager that was killed by the policeman, was killed at point blank with the gun of the policeman. It was very graphic. A video was filmed, and that's what happened and made people realize that police violence was there and very pregnant. And you know that in France there has been unrest because of the pension reform, because of the yellow vest that was back in 2018 and 20, and all this is kind of building up. And what we see in the suburbs is a reaction that we've seen in 2005, but now the question is the size of the mobilization and the duration of these riots during the night, because they mostly happen at night.
And what do we know about this young 17-year-old Naël who lost his life in such a horrific manner?
What we know is that he refused to obey the order of the policeman and to stop the car. And apparently that was not the first time. He has been convoked to the police station before for the same kind of behavior. But of course, in France, you don't get shot. It's not something that the policemen are doing. It's very cautious, and that's why it's shocking, because when you see the video, the fact that the policemen shoot without even saying stop or I shoot, or waiting for any reaction of the conductor, is quite striking. So we don't know much about this young guy, apart that he was there at the wrong time at the wrong moment. He was too young to have a permit to drive a car, and the fact that he didn't obey to the cops was not the first time. So maybe he was known by the policeman at the time, but he didn't deserve. And that's all the debate in France right now, is that the policeman shouldn't have used his gun in this situation that was not legal.
And as you know, I'm sure you know, we have very similar issues here in the United States. The outrage, the mass protest that we saw after George Floyd's murder. And of course, that's just one example. There have been so many accusations of systemic racism in this country, calls for police reform. Alexis, does France have the same problem?
Yes, we do have the same problem. And there was a death 2 years ago of a father that was killed by policemen for a control, not by a gun, but by exactly like George Floyd, by a control, and he was suffocating. So we have the same kind of issue, and we have the same protest already. It's just building up, because since then nothing really happened in the police, or President Macron never really realized that the violence of the police forces was a big issue for the French society, and it's coming up because of this kid. But there is always stories about police violence, and the fact that the power in place doesn't want to address the issue is just making these riots becoming very big, because there is this anger and there is this need of debate, on a need of being heard, that we have an issue with police violence, just like in the US, in France.
And what should Emmanuel Macron's government be doing to address some of these issues? And of course, we know what they're doing in terms of security with stepped up police officers everywhere.
Well, the immediate answer is security and confrontation. Basically, 30,000 policemen will be deployed in France, and 5,000 only in the Paris region, with special units like RAID, GIGN, only to address the direct riots and rioters. The long-term answer to that would be to sort of build up a new relationship between the French citizen and the police, because what we've seen in the past years is that the French people, some of the French people living in the suburbs, in these territories, are considering the policemen as their enemies, not as policemen for the Republic or the French state. And the big issue is that we're turning into this riot mode where any kind of public force, be it the fire people or the policemen or even doctors, are seen as enemies when they enter these territories. So that's one thing should be done in local dialogue, and the fact that these youngsters shouldn't be considering policemen as their enemies no more.
Yeah, you're right. We'll leave it there. Alexis Poulin, merci.